which he did. We'll get onto that. Well, we'll get onto that now, really, because he did finish second, and it was a McLaren battle. I think this is the first time we've seen, I think it'd be incorrect to say the gloves off, but we've always sort of talked around how having these two guys together is inevitably going to produce fireworks at some point. And even today, you've got to say hats off to Zak Brown for the way he's handled all this. Of course, things would be much more calm and much more stable had they kept Daniel Ricciardo alongside Lando Norris, and they'd still be very successful. They'd still be winning Grand Prix, still be leading the Constructors' Championship, still would have won the Constructors' Championship last year. But anyway, that didn't happen. They've got Oscar Piastri in the car. And until now, it's always been this sort of unspoken thing of, well, you know, we race closely, but we never touch, one car never touches another and all this stuff. And yeah, we all race together as a team. But today, we had the radio question to Oscar. Pretty straightforward. Do you want your strategy to be based on the best possible strategy to beat Charles Leclerc, who at that point was in front of him, or do you want to race Lando? And his response, I don't really care about Charles, I want to race Lando. Wow, that is quite a big thing for a racing driver to say. I don't really care about the win. I think at that point, it's not, I'm putting words in his mouth then, because at that point, I think it was pretty clear that Ferrari are going to be struggling in the back end of the race, and Oscar probably knew that as well. And I think this is potentially, for the fans, a great way to go into the August break, because now we know in the second half of the year what McLaren are all about. Of course Oscar wants to win the World Championship. Of course Lando wants to win the World Championship. They don't really speak about it other than, oh, it's going to be close. And here was that thing coming out in public on the radio. Much more importantly than the stuff on the radio, though, was what Oscar was doing on the racetrack. And he was pretty ragged but super quick in catching Lando. And now let's focus on the last 3 laps of the race. I think press pause at this point to remind ourselves that the 2025 Grand Prix car is an unbelievably good car, especially if it's painted orange and called a McLaren. Very high levels of grip, very good balance, very good handling all round, very drivable racing car. So the odds of somebody like Lando or Oscar actually making a mistake big enough to let the car behind past, very, very small. And I'm assuming Oscar went into those last 3 or 4 laps thinking that. To me, the mindset would have been, I'm going to have one shot at getting Lando, one shot only. And the way to do that is to look after the tyres for the lap and focus on the last 3 corners and put Lando and get as close as I can on those last 3 corners, particularly as that radio message had come out earlier from Lando saying, forget turn 2, it's the last 3 corners I'm worried about. And of course the drivers don't hear one another's radio, but of course the engineers do. And I'm betting Tom Stallard would have heard that. So from Oscar's point of view, it should all have been a build-up to doing it all on the last lap of the race, based on a build-up through the last 3 corners of the last 3 or 4 laps. But he was a bit ragged. And 2 laps from the end of the race, he had a big moment coming through the last corner, a big moment, a half moment, lost the back end a bit, had to correct it, and was nowhere near Lando in terms of, even with the help of DRS. So now we're on the penultimate lap, and he's a little bit closer, and he's got the DRS. And as they're coming right down to the end, at terminal velocity, just for the braking area, Lando brakes a little bit earlier. Suddenly Oscar's got more speed differential and dives down the inside from far too far back, locks the inside front, which gives him a flat spot straight away. And then beyond that, immediately on the radio, as you can imagine, Oscar, remember how we race one another, 1 lap to go, no chance now of passing Lando Norris. It was the wrong move at the wrong time, and he did it from too far back. And that was a mistake, I think. And that was, you know, there's a lot of talk about Oscar being very calm, and we saw that in the first lap pass in the Belgian Grand Prix, for Pete's sake. He is a very calm, very focused racing driver in his own way. But I think here, it was a little bit ragged, and he could have done it with Lando. And here's another thing. This is obviously a Peter Windsor thing, because you know what I think about DRS. But if DRS had never been invented and we didn't have DRS on the cars, he would either have got a clean toe from Lando and got him down the inside, because he had a big tyre advantage at that point, or he would have got him somewhere else out on the lap, maybe into turn 2, not a bad place, or on the outside of turn 2, and maybe into turn 6. Turn 6, you say? Yeah, well, there was a guy called Max Verstappen, who I think passed 4 cars today in the Hungarian Grand Prix, and not one of them was in a DRS zone. They're all into turn 6. Wow. And then the tyres went off, got to say. So that's a terrible day for Max. But the first 4 or 5 laps with Max, they went off on about lap 5. I think he lost the front end. But until then, he was boom, 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 passing everyone into turn 6. Oh, and he got Lewis into turn 4, didn't he? That kink, the left-hander, where they just go down to 6th gear, just as they turn in. And I don't think Lewis really expected Max to be down the inside of him and sort of jinked the steering and ran wide, and Max was straight through. So there's another pass he did without DRS. So yeah, blame DRS a little bit. And I think that's, DRS lures drivers in Oscar's position into going for it at that moment. And that's, that's because of DRS. And he suddenly felt, wow, this speed differential, I can maybe do this. And maybe Lando might lock up and go wide and I can get him. I thought it was quite funny when they're sitting in the green room afterwards, and that's being replayed in front of the 2 McLaren drivers. And Lando's in the middle, Oscar's on his right, and George Russell's on his left. And George says, well, I wish you'd T-boned him, even though Lando's sitting right next to him. Quite a good moment, that one. So yeah, so Oscar finished second. There's no way he was ever going to be able to put pressure on Lando on that last lap after what he'd just done the previous lap. And as I say, that was the wrong move at the wrong time, I think. And Oscar had gone into that 2-stop strategy, partly because that was the way to win the race. It was the fastest strategy predicted by Pirelli. But it was also dictated by his race with Charles Leclerc. So you could say that if Lando Norris had been